They laughed when she pulled out the pink rifle. Thought it was a joke, a gimmick, a vanity prop brought to a live fire range like someone mistook war for cosplay. She didn't say a word, just lay down, took one shot, 5,000 meters, dead center, while the entire SEAL team watched in disbelief. But when the shot landed, it wasn't applause she got. It was a direct call from the SEAL commander, asking who just broke his record. Before I show you what really happened on that range, make sure you're subscribed with the bell icon turned on, and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Because what you're about to see wasn't just a good shot. It was a warning. The wind came screaming down off the ridgelines like it had teeth, and up here at Grid Echo 7, some classified altitude in the Nevada desert, everything felt like it was about to get ripped away. She wasn't supposed to be here. Hell, she wasn't even supposed to have brought that rifle. Just observe, take notes, file reports about what the real operators were doing. But when America's most elite snipers started missing shots they should have made in their sleep, when thermal currents turned precision into prayer, she did something that changed everything. Before I show you what really happened that morning, make sure you're subscribed and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Now let's get into it. The wind up here didn't just blow, it cut. Black Mesa range stretched out below like fractured stone and heat shimmer that turned distance into something unreliable. A government SUV pulled to a stop near the range tower. Lieutenant Commander Adrian Cole stepped out carrying a clipboard and a long rifle case that hit you like a slap. Hot matte pink, faded and scuffed, but unmistakable against all the tactical black surrounding it. 6 SEALs were leaning against their gear truck, already deep into morning prep. One let out a snort of laughter that carried across the lot. "Tell me that's not the gun," he muttered. Another grinned. "Looks like somebody brought her daughter's toy to show and tell." Chief Warrant Officer Mac Holbrook straightened up. Late 40s, sun-damaged face, faded trident tattoo. He watched Adrian approach with neutral military courtesy. "Ma'am, you must be the observer they sent up." Adrian nodded. "Cole, Lieutenant Commander, I was told to run data collection on the extended range segment." Mac gestured toward the firing line. "We've been at it since 0600, working targets at 2,000, 3,000. Got a plate sitting just under 5,000 meters on that red rock saddle." Adrian followed his gaze toward heat shimmer that made everything dance. A white steel target caught the light occasionally, barely visible. "Copy that," she said, moving toward an empty bench. The SEALs watched her walk away. When she unlatched her case, another wave of chuckles rolled through the group. Mac shook his head. "Pink stock. That's a choice." "Gotta coordinate with the Barbie collection," one added. Adrian didn't respond. She unwrapped the rifle and began methodical pre-flight checks. Bolt action. Scope mounts, every movement deliberate and silent. Behind her, suppressed rifles cracked downrange in measured rhythm. This wasn't a playground. Black Mesa was where wind destroyed egos and distance separated professionals from pretenders. But Lieutenant Commander Adrian Cole hadn't come to impress anyone. She'd come to prove whether her design could survive this range, and whether she still could too. At 2,000 meters, the SEALs dropped precision fire with textbook execution. Steel rang with solid hits. "On target, left shoulder!" Staff Sergeant Callahan barked. "Tag it again." Ortega's rifle cracked. Another hit. Mac watched with quiet satisfaction. These were Tier 2 candidates, shooters who could read mirage like smoke signals. But 2,000 was just warm-up. "3,000's hot," the tower announced. The complexity jumped exponentially. Heat distortion turned targets into flickering ghosts. Ortega's next shot landed 5 feet wide. "Wind snapped west," Callahan cursed, checking his meter. "High-level shear off that ridgeline." But corrections weren't working. Half the round sailed high, the rest hit dirt with no pattern. They managed 3 hits out of 10 attempts. "5,000's ready," came the amused voice from the tower. Mac turned toward Adrian, still making notes behind her bench. "All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we see who can hit the impossible." The 5,000-meter plate sat on an eroded cliff shelf, barely visible even with magnification. The SEALs took turns attempting mathematical prayer. One short, one high, one so far left the spotter couldn't see impact. By the fifth attempt, jokes had died completely. Range is too unstable, Callahan admitted. Thermal blooms rolling 3 directions, bullet drags bouncing off layered currents, 10 missed shots, no steel hits. The team was quiet now, frustration replacing confidence. Only then did Adrian move toward her case. Without ceremony, she unlatched her case. The rifle didn't look like anything on the firing line. Longer barrel, that faded matte pink finish, scope with multiple turrets hardwired to an analog firing solution computer. No digital screens, just raw mechanical precision. Mac raised an eyebrow. What in hell is that thing? Prototype, SOCOM research grant, 1 of 1 build, chambered in .408 Derringer-Hoffman hybrid. She pulled out a cartridge that looked more like a miniature artillery shell. Custom loads? Callahan asked. Stabilized for desert crosswinds at extended range. Hand-seated primers. One of the younger SEALs whispered, "That pink still makes it look like a toy." Adrian assembled accessories with fluid efficiency. As she worked, her thumb brushed a scar on her wrist, old, pale. For a heartbeat, the range flickered away, replaced by memories of a bloodied fob in Helmand, artillery walking closer. She exhaled and continued her preparation. "Give her a clear lane," Mac called out. "I want to see what this Barbie rifle does." Adrian dropped prone behind the weapon. The atmosphere shifted without anyone saying a word. Nobody was laughing anymore. "You planning to actually shoot that thing?" Mac said, half question and half challenge. "Or just keeps documenting wind patterns like a meteorology student?" Adrian's voice was flat, matter of fact, stripped of everything except essential information. "Just one shot. That's all I need to collect the data." The team exchanged glances. Even Ortega stopped cleaning his scope lens to pay attention. Mac let out a short laugh, more curious now than dismissive. "One shot at 5,000 meters? Adrian nodded without lifting her head from the scope. "Do you have someone who can spot for me?" Callahan raised his hand, looking to Mac for approval. Mac shrugged. "Your funeral. But when you end up chasing phantom wind calls and thermal ghosts, don't expect my people to pretend it was close." Adrian turned her head just enough to meet his eyes directly. "I won't be chasing anything." A gust rolled across the ridge just then, picking up loose dust and scattered debris before dying away into the kind of stillness that made everyone unconsciously hold their breath. The mirage shimmer intensified on the horizon, turning the distant steel plate into something that looked more like a heat distortion than a solid target. The range fell quiet in a way that had nothing to do with normal operations. No more casual conversation, no equipment noise. Even the surveillance drone seemed to hover more quietly. From the tower, a bored voice crackled through the communications system. "Range Echo 7, be advised command is monitoring tower feeds for spot evaluation. SEAL Commander Stratton is online for real-time assessment. Let's keep everything professional and by the book." Mac muttered under his breath. "Outstanding. He'll love watching this circus act." Down at the firing line, Callahan took position beside Adrian with his spotting scope, flipping through her handwritten ballistic chart with growing bewilderment. The calculations filled 3 pages of small, precise handwriting that looked more like engineering notes than standard dope cards. "You actually computed Coriolis effects down to individual arc minutes?" he asked. Adrian didn't answer. She was already making final adjustments to the stock-mounted atmospheric pressure gauge, breathing slowly and evenly as she settled into the kind of firing position that looked like it had been carved from the ground itself. The communications system crackled again. "Range control to all stations. We have live fire authorization for extended range targets. All safety protocols are active." 5,000 meters downrange, the steel plate sat motionless in heat shimmer that made it flicker like a mirage. It might as well have been in another time zone for all the connection it seemed to have with the firing line. But to Adrian, the target wasn't flickering or dancing or playing optical tricks. She was reading the air around it like a 3-dimensional map. watching how thermal distortion bent left at 50 feet elevation, then twisted sharply right at 400 meters distance. The vertical currents weren't parallel. The horizontal winds weren't consistent. The entire valley had its own respiratory pattern that most people never noticed. 5 mils elevation, 1.7 right windage, she said quietly. Call the shot when I complete my breathing cycle. Callahan blinked, checking his own calculations against hers. Say again, on that windage? You heard correctly. He looked downrange through his spotting scope, trying to see what she was seeing. The math didn't match anything in his experience, but something in her tone suggested arguing would be pointless. You're sure about this? Adriana's finger found the trigger, her breathing already synchronized with patterns only she could detect. No second chances at this range. Better make it count. The firing line had never been this quiet. No rifle reports echoing from other positions. No radio chatter from the tower. No footsteps or equipment noise. Just the wind moving across Nevada ridgelines in dry, measured breaths that seemed to be building towards something inevitable. Lieutenant Commander Adrienne Cole lay behind the pink rifle in a fusion of body, weapon, and earth that didn't waste a single calorie of energy or fraction of attention. Her cheek welded to the custom stock, one eye aligned through optics that cost more than most cars, breathing that had slowed to match rhythms most people never noticed. 5,000 meters, just over 3 miles of desert air, thermal distortion, and wind currents that changed direction and velocity every 100 yards of distance. The kind of shot that lived in the theoretical realm for most shooters. She was about to make it practical. Spotting scope shows 1.7 drift. Thermal lift on the right quarter, Callahan confirmed, his own breathing careful and controlled. You've got maybe a 10-second window between thermal waves. Adrienne made one final adjustment to her elevation turret. Clicks so small they were barely audible. Movements that came from muscle memory built through thousands of rounds fired in conditions that varied from laboratory perfect to actively hostile. She didn't consult digital readouts or pull up ballistic applications on a tablet. Every correction came from experience that had been paid for in blood, sweat, and the kind of failure that taught lessons no classroom could replicate. Mark when ready, she said. Across the firing line, Mac Holbrook stood with his arms folded. Squinting downrange at a target he could barely see even with magnification. She's not even breathing hard, Ortega muttered to nobody in particular. Mac didn't respond. He was watching something in Adrienne's posture that he recognized but couldn't quite place. The complete stillness. The way she seemed to have merged with the weapon and the ground beneath her. He'd seen it before in operators who had moved beyond technique into something that looked more like instinct. The pink rifle shifted almost imperceptibly as Adrienne made final alignment adjustments based on calculations that existed only in her head. She drew one measured breath, held it at the natural respiratory pause that every precision shooter learned to find. Her finger took up trigger slack, with pressure so gradual it was more like erosion than mechanical action. And then, crack! The suppressed rifle coughed once, a sound so muffled and controlled it was barely audible over ambient wind noise. No dramatic recoil, no exaggerated muzzle blast, just mechanical precision doing exactly what it had been designed to do, downrange. A hand-loaded cartridge carved through Nevada air at velocities that had been calculated to remain stable through thermal distortion and crosswind that would destabilize conventional ammunition. It danced through jet stream variations, sliced across rising thermals, and navigated wind shear patterns that turned most bullets into expensive confetti. 3 seconds passed while the round covered distance that most people drove in cars. Still in flight, Callahan reported, tracking through his spotting scope. 5 seconds, the desert held its breath. 7 seconds, silence except for wind moving through rock formations like something alive. Then, ping. Faint, almost lost in the distance, but unmistakable metal-on-metal contact that carried back across miles of empty air like an echo from another world. In the tower, automatic cameras zoomed in on the target location. A small puff of dust lifted from the exact center of the white steel plate, dissipating in thermals that had been fighting precision shooters all morning. Dead center. Perfect impact. Echo 7, this is Tower Control, came the stunned voice over communications. Target impact confirmed at 5000 meters. Direct hit, center mass. Mac's head turned toward the radio like it had just started speaking a foreign language. Callahan lowered his spotting scope, looked at Adrian, then back through the scope again as if the image might change. Jesus Christ, I couldn't even track the bullet flight? Adrian exhaled slowly and worked the bolt with a clean, precise motion. One spent casing ejected, polished brass from a hand-loaded cartridge that represented months of development work. It landed in the dust beside her elbow with a sound like money hitting concrete. She didn't celebrate, didn't pump her fist or make any dramatic gestures. She just sat up, began basic post-shooting procedures, and returned to making notes on her data sheet as if nothing unusual had happened. Behind her, Mac took a step forward and discovered he'd forgotten how to form words. That was, he began, then stopped because language wasn't adequate for what he'd just witnessed. The communications system crackled with a different voice, deeper, carrying the kind of authority that made everyone stand straighter. This is SEAL Commander Stratton at headquarters. Tower Control, I need immediate confirmation on shooter identity for that 5,000-meter impact. Brief pause while the range officer collected himself. Sir, the shot was taken by Lieutenant Commander Adrian Cole. Observer status, single round fired. Longer silence on the other end. Then Stratton's voice returned lower and sharper. I need visual confirmation immediately. Stream all available feeds to my station. Max stared at Adrian like he was seeing her for the first time in his life. The pink rifle sat on the bench beside her, morning sunlight reflecting off metal that was still warm from the shot. Dust from the report hadn't even finished settling. One shot, no warm-up rounds, no ranging attempts, no excuses. Just perfection delivered with the kind of casual competence that redefined everyone's understanding of what was possible. The silence didn't last long enough for anyone to process what they'd witnessed. Echo 7, confirm again. Who made that shot? Commander Stratton's voice cut through the post-impact quiet, with the kind of edge that suggested someone's career might depend on accurate answers. Lieutenant Commander Adrian Cole, sir, the tower operator repeated, sounding like he was having trouble believing his own words. Observer status, pink rifle, first and only round fired at the 5,000-meter target. Static filled the pause that followed. Where's my video feed? The range officer's voice got tighter. Forwarding all camera angles to Command Net 2 now, sir. Drone footage, impact verification, wind trace overlays, everything's being uploaded. On multiple screens back at headquarters, Adrian could be seen calmly folding her data sheet, while the rifle that had just redefined long-range accuracy sat cooling on the bench behind her. No victory dance, no acknowledgement of having done anything unusual, just methodical post-shooting procedures. Down on the firing line, Mac Holbrook finally found his voice. That wasn't luck. Adrian looked up from her notes. Luck doesn't exist at these ranges. Physics works or it doesn't. Before Mac could figure out how to respond, a sharp electronic tone cut through the morning air. Beep, beep, beep. A drone launched from a concealed position 2 ridges over, part of the range's advanced training scenarios designed to simulate hostile aerial targets. It was painted flat black to minimize visibility, moving in unpredictable patterns, climbing, diving, changing direction every few seconds, like an angry wasp with military-grade navigation systems. Range injection, announced the tower. Drone designated Tango 1. Evasive patterns active. Engage and neutralize. You are weapons free. The SEALs scattered to their positions with practiced efficiency. Ortega grabbed his rifle. Callahan started calling out target movement patterns. Mac began coordinating fire control. All the synchronized chaos of professionals doing what they'd trained for. But the drone was already climbing into a steep bank. then diving left before rising 30 feet and changing direction completely. It moved like something designed by people who understood how hard it was to hit flying objects at extended range. Collins fired first, clean miss. Ortega's shot went high as the target dropped into an unexpected dive. The drone continued its evasive maneuvers, darting between positions like it was taunting them. Adrian watched for maybe 3 seconds, made a mental calculation, and reached for another cartridge. Nobody told her to engage. Nobody asked if she was qualified for moving targets. Callahan looked over as she chambered the round. "You can't possibly hit that thing at 4,700 meters, Adrian interrupted, settling back into prone position. "That's actually easier than the static target." She made no adjustments to her scope settings. The firing solution was already calculated in her head. The drone jinked left, then shot upward in a climb that would have challenged helicopter pilots. Adriane's finger found the trigger. Crack! The drone jerked in midair like it had hit an invisible wall, then tumbled out of the sky in a shower of components and electronic debris. It hit the desert floor with a crunch that carried clearly across the distance, bounced once, and went still. "Impact confirmed," the tower announced, and this time there was no hiding the amazement in the operator's voice. "Tango 1 neutralized by same shooter." The firing line went completely silent. Max stared at the spot where the drone had disappeared behind a low rise, then looked at Adrian, who was already beginning to break down her rifle for cleaning. Not like someone showing off, like someone with a schedule to maintain. "You mind telling me," he said, stepping closer with the careful tone people used when they suspected they were dealing with something beyond their experience, "what exactly you're doing walking onto my range, dropping precision fire at 5 kilometers, and swatting aerial targets like they're clay pigeons?" Adrian looked up from the cleaning rod she was threading through her barrel. "Validating equipment performance under field conditions." "Equipment validation," Mac repeated slowly. Callahan cleared his throat. "Sir, Commander Stratton just diverted a helicopter from Fort Lane specifically to get here. That's not standard procedure for equipment tests." Adrian continued cleaning her rifle with the kind of methodical precision that suggested this was a ritual she'd performed thousands of times. "Neither is consistent accuracy at extended range in adverse conditions." Mac exhaled, trying to process what he'd witnessed. "I've led sniper teams in Kandahar, Sadr City, Helmand Province. I've seen once-in-a-lifetime shots. Hell, I've made a few myself. But what you just did, that wasn't just exceptional marksmanship. That was something else entirely." Adrian paused in her cleaning routine, looking directly at him. "I designed the ammunition. I designed the platform. I've tested both in environments that make this range look like a controlled laboratory. This valley follows predictable patterns once you understand the thermal dynamics. And what patterns are those? Ego creates weight. Precision requires lightness." Max studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. The kind of acknowledgement that came when experience recognized something it couldn't fully explain, but couldn't ignore. Behind them, the sound of rotor blades began rising over the ridgeline, fast, aggressive, and getting louder every second. A Blackhawk appeared over the nearest peak, flying low and hard toward the range complex. Adrian stood up, securing her cleaning kit. "Sounds like my ride's here. Time to explain some things." The helicopter touched down with enough force to kick dust clouds across the firing line and send loose equipment skittering toward cover. Commander Stratton didn't wait for the rotors to fully spool down. He stepped out of the aircraft like someone accustomed to arriving at situations that required immediate attention. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a plain flight jacket over desert camouflage, moving with the purposeful energy of someone who'd spent decades making decisions that kept other people alive. Mac Holbrook stepped forward to meet him, but Stratton walked past without acknowledgement. His entire focus was locked on Adrian, who was calmly securing her rifle case like nothing unusual was happening. "Cole!" Stratton called over the noise, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made everyone in hearing distance stand straighter. "You're not supposed to be operational." Adrian met his stare without flinching. I wasn't. This was data collection. Data collection doesn't end with my entire Overwatch team getting schooled in front of command surveillance feeds. She didn't back down. The data was conclusive. The system works. Stratton looked at the rifle case, then back at her face. Is that the Mark 10 prototype? Mark 10 Mod 3, 408 Derringer Hoffman chamber, recoil compensation system, thermal stabilization, built specifically for extended range precision in adverse atmospheric conditions. You told the development board the system wasn't ready for field testing. It wasn't, she said matter-of-factly, until this morning. Mac finally stepped closer, confusion and professional curiosity overriding protocol. Sir, with respect, who exactly am I dealing with here? Stratton glanced at him, then back at Adrian. You want to answer that? Or should I provide context? Adrian was quiet for a moment, weighing something that involved more than just professional courtesy. Finally, I ran advanced weapons development for DARPA from 2012 to 2019, embedded with DevGru and the 75th Rangers. Helped rewrite precision engagement doctrine after Operation Salt Line. Mac's expression changed. Salt Line is classified above my clearance level. Adrian nodded. Classified, but not theoretical. I've had to prove systems work under conditions where failure meant people died. This isn't the first time I've had to demonstrate capabilities to people who weren't sure I belonged. Stratton added. She didn't just design this weapons platform. She broke through accuracy barriers that the entire small arms development community said were impossible. What you witnessed this morning was the first live fire demonstration of a system that's going to change how we think about long-range precision. Mac looked at the rifle case again, trying to reconcile the pink finish with the implications of what he'd just learned. The color choice. There's a reason? Adrian's expression softened just slightly. During an extraction in 2016, we had a shooter down in triple canopy jungle. All our standard equipment blended into the vegetation. Thermal wasn't working through the humidity. We only found him because his 8-year-old daughter had sent him a care package that included cheap pink duct tape. He'd wrapped part of his stock with it as a joke. That bright color saved his life by making him visible when everything else disappeared. She paused, touching the case gently. I remembered that lesson. Mac nodded slowly, understanding dawning. It's not about the color. It's about visibility when you need to be found. Or when you need people to understand that assumptions can be dangerous. Stratton was already tapping commands into a secure satellite phone. You're briefing Joint Special Operations Command tonight. If this system performs consistently, we're accelerating procurement timelines. Adrian secured the last latch on her case. That's why I came. Not for recognition, for validation. She turned toward Mac. Your team is solid. Today's conditions caught them in atmospheric variables that don't show up in training manuals. With the right data, they'll adapt. Mac shook his head. What I've got is a team that just learned humility from someone they completely misjudged, and a story that's going to follow them for the rest of their careers. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a unit patch, worn fabric with their squadron insignia, faded from years of operational use. This belongs with people who've earned it. Adrian looked at the patch, then met his eyes. Keep it. You'll need it again tomorrow. I won't. She followed Stratton toward the idling helicopter, moving with the same understated efficiency that had characterized everything she'd done since arriving. The rotors began spinning up, creating dust devils and noise that made conversation impossible. Max stood there long after the aircraft lifted off, watching it disappear beyond the ridgeline like it had never existed. The firing line felt different now, quieter, like something had shifted in the fundamental understanding of what was possible when assumptions met reality. Beside him, Callahan finally spoke up. So, what do we call a weapons system like that? Mac was quiet for a long moment, still staring at the horizon where the helicopter had vanished. Then, with something that might have been a smile, he said, whatever she wants to call it. The helicopter made 2 passes over the range complex before finally disappearing completely, its black silhouette absorbed by the jagged Nevada horizon like it had been erased from existence. Back on the firing line, the SEAL team stood in uncharacteristic stillness. Nobody reached for equipment, nobody started post-exercise procedures, nobody made jokes. The pink rifle was gone, but its impact lingered in the desert air like heat shimmer. Mac Holbrook broke the silence by walking over to the bench where Adrian had made her impossible shot. The spent casing still lay in the dust where it had ejected, polished brass catching sunlight, sitting upright like a small monument to precision. "Leave it alone," he said when Ortega moved toward it. "That stays exactly where it landed." In the range tower, the officer lowered his binoculars and picked up the radio again. "Echo 7, be advised. Command confirms Cole's performance data and system specifications are being forwarded to Joint Testing Command. Your entire team is scheduled for recertification using her atmospheric modeling protocols." Callahan looked confused. "We're adopting her methods?" "We're learning from them," Mac corrected. "There's a difference." 15 minutes later, another government vehicle arrived, this one moving slower, less dramatically, but with the same official authority. A man in a business suit stepped out, followed by a logistics officer carrying a sealed container and official paperwork. They approached Mac directly. "Warrant Officer Holbrook, we're here for post-demonstration debrief and evidence collection." Mac nodded toward the brass casing still gleaming in the dirt. She left it there. The logistics officer knelt carefully, using tweezers to place the spent cartridge into a padded container like he was handling a museum artifact. The suited man extended a folded piece of paper sealed with an old-school wax impression from Stratton's command ring. "Commander Stratton asked us to deliver this personally." Mac opened it and read the single line of handwritten text. "You just met our contingency option." He folded the note and tucked it into his vest pocket. No further explanation was necessary. As the collection team packed up and departed, Callahan walked over and stood beside him, both men looking out across the desert range that had been transformed by one woman with a pink rifle and mathematical precision. "Think she'll come back?" Mac shook his head. "People like that don't repeat demonstrations. They just appear when the situation requires their capabilities." She seemed like she knew things, more than she was telling us. Mac glanced at him. "That's because she did. That rifle wasn't about making a statement. It was about providing proof." "Proof of what?" "That the most dangerous person on any range," Mac said, turning toward the long expanse of desert that had humbled professional shooters all morning, "is the one who doesn't need you to believe in their capabilities to make them work." Would you have dismissed her based on that pink rifle before seeing what she could do with it? Do you think a shot at 3 miles is even possible in real-world conditions, or was this just perfect skill meeting perfect conditions? And here's the big question. If you were designing a rifle to save lives, what would you do to make sure people remembered it when it mattered most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one and respond to as many as we can. If this story reminded you that quiet competence beats loud confidence every time, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss these daily stories about the people who prove that assumptions can be deadly. Share this with someone who's ever been underestimated, or anyone who knows that the most important victories happen when nobody's watching. More stories about hidden expertise, battlefield reversals, and the professionals who redefine impossible are waiting on your screen right now. Go watch those next. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, with another story that proves appearances can be deceiving. Until then, remember, precision doesn't need permission.